Okay, so let's get started. So the backstory behind this whole, by the way, can everybody hear me? Okay, I'm
Yep.
I'm assuming so. Okay, great.
Okay, great. Yes.
So, a couple months ago, Azlen had this idea of hosting a few learning groups on different subjects, and one of those subjects was the future of learning. So there's like a little group of us who would get together every week and then talk about, uh, you know, different learning strategies. We'd read different papers and try to figure out like, well, what things are broken with the current way in which people learn, and how can we maybe fix those things. And this presentation is just going to be like a big summary of all that, talking about the major points, the major things that people brought up, and where we got as a group over those few months. So a little bit about me. My name is Sav. For those of you that don't know, my Twitter handle is just my name and last name. If any of you guys want to sort of connect with me and continue the conversation there, I'm like very much looking for people who are also thinking about these things. Let's just first of all begin with like a little bit of a story about how the future might look in terms of learning, in terms of the education system. So imagine this: you're in the future. The year is something like maybe 2030, 10 years down the line, um, and every city has these maybe just these like learning hubs, or like these places where people can go and collaborate with others on some kind of subject. The minute you walk in, you see this big wall, and on the wall, there's just basically a list of all of the mysteries, all the unsolved problems in a particular field. So for example, they'd be separated by field, and then you have like all the unanswered questions in math, and then you have all the unanswered questions in biology, and so on. And you'd be able to look at all these things and be able to see like, okay, like where we're at as a civilization, and you'd be able to pick one of these and and just basically say, okay, well, this question looks interesting. I want to see um, who else is working on it, and you'd be able to get matched with people who are working on the same thing. So, for example, you'd have some kind of mentor, some kind of advisor who'd match you up with people who are working on the same problems. Um, and then, in addition to that, there's a lot that can be done on the software side of things as well. So if you think about how Netflix replaced TV, like these sort of like bundled um, channel packages that people would have to buy, I can imagine a similar thing happening in the education system, where instead of getting a degree, maybe people can just go and sign up for courses a la carte, and that way they wouldn't have to specialize in a particular thing right away. They would just be able to take the set of courses that interest them and then come away with basically this personalized degree almost. There's a lot that can also be done in terms of maybe apps and just getting people like apps that help help get the right habits in place for, let's say, just checking in every day and learning something new about the subject you're interested in. For example, right now, I'm learning to play piano, and the main way that I'm learning is I have an app that is structured by lessons, and then it just like listens to you play and then gives you feedback on how well you're playing. And that's just a simple thing you can check in there, for 10 minutes, play for 10 minutes, and then be done with it. And so that's something that I think has a lot of potential as well. So, to me at least, just looking at the current education system, it feels like it's in some sense dead. And well, what do I mean by that? It seems like the people who come into, for example, some prestigious university are like they have a lot of hopes and dreams, a lot of ambition. You can like kind of see the fire in their eyes, and then by the time that they get out of the education system, they act like grown-ups, so to speak, right? They've kind of conditioned themselves to just kind of cope with all the inefficiencies of the system, to find the boring things tolerable, and maybe the most that they hope for is to find some kind of office job to be able to pay their bills. And so it's like all of the creativity, all of the ambition is somehow getting drained. And the two concepts that I feel are very useful for understanding what's so broken about the education system are Goodhart's law and the Procrustean bed. So Goodhart's law basically states that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So let's say you're trying to optimize for, let's say you're trying to do something and then you have a metric that you use to tell how well you're doing at a thing. Well, if you start paying attention to that metric instead of paying attention to doing a good job, then the incentives of the system can get messed up. And I'll be talking a little bit about that later. The second and maybe the more important concept here is the Procrustean bed. And so in ancient mythology, Procrustes was this person who I mean there are different versions of the story, but basically you'd have he would offer his bed to travelers who needed a place to stay. But if the person was too short for the bed, then he would stretch them so that to fit them exactly to the bed. If the person was too tall, then he would cut off the person's legs just to fit them in the bed. And so the point here is that it's like you're using a rigid system and you're trying to fit in a diverse range of humans into a fixed system, and you're trying to make them all conform to the system. And once you start thinking this way, you can notice these things a lot in society, and I'd argue that the education system is a major example of a modern day Procrustean bed. So okay, then the question is, well, how can we make education more alive? So it shouldn't be a Procrustean bed. It shouldn't be a sort of a Goodhart's law situation where you're optimizing for metrics instead of trying to learn. And so what we, I guess to summarize everything that we talked about, we came to the conclusion that education should be something that's personalized, and that's decentralized in a certain sense, because it's easier to make a small system personalized. If you have some kind of big institution, then you run into this problem where you have to accommodate many different people, and you end up with something that is inherently a compromise. There has to be some kind of intrinsic motivation. You have to actually want to learn the thing. You can't just have extrinsic motivation in the form of, well, if you don't learn this, then you will get a bad grade or something like that. Self-paced learning is important, or at least group-paced learning. If you're part of a group of people that learn something, then the group goes at its own pace. The thing that I've noticed in college is that you have a bunch of courses that, whatever the subject matter is, you try to cram it into a 4-month session. And oftentimes there's no opportunity to go back and reread the stuff that you learned before, because it's like, well, now you have to move on to the next chapter, the next assignment. It should also be intense if you want it to be. Some of my best learning experiences have been, in a very intense, high stakes situation. But it can't be forced on you. You have to put yourself there. And maybe the most important thing is this emphasis on exploration, adventure, mystery as a motivator. What haven't we figured out? What's still there to learn? And again, it has to be. It can be any form like signaling. The primary motivator has to be, I want to acquire knowledge. And what I find in a lot of the university system these days is people have this cynical view on the system where it's like, if you think that you're there for learning, then, well, it just means that you're naive or something. And really everybody's there to just get high marks and get a degree. A big part of what we discussed was peer learning. So, and specifically we talked about the shift towards the second half of the 19th century from this sort of monitorial system, this peer learning system, where you have some mentor or some teacher that monitors the class, to a teacher-led system where it's more of a top-down. You have the instructor, and the instructor tells all of the students what to learn, how to do things. There's many reasons for this. I mean, the Industrial Revolution probably played a big role in this. Maybe, like more people started going to school, so you have to scale it. How do you scale it? Okay, well, you make it more standardized. There could be plenty of reasons, not really sure. But the point is that in that transition from a monitorial system to a teacher-led system, intentional or not, that encouraged a lot more conformity in the education system, because you weren't really talking to your peers as much anymore. You're just getting top-down instructions from your instructor. On the other hand, we've read a couple papers talking about peer studying, and basically it's been found, at least in the papers that we've read, that peer learning helps with the discovery of new ideas, helps with motivation a lot, because you're in this group and you kind of like pull each other up. Helps them fill in knowledge gaps through conversation with others, encourages more agency on your part because you're not getting told what to do as much. And we've also come across this difference between peer tutoring and peer collaboration, where peer tutoring is maybe you have one of your peers who knows more about the subject and is giving you instruction, and whereas peer collaboration is just everybody is in the same boat and they're just trying to figure things out. And both are very important. We found that smaller groups tend to work better than larger groups do. So anywhere from, I don't know, like 2, 3 to 7 or 8 people seems to be the best, because that's where you can have the most interesting conversations and everybody gets an opportunity to chime in. The other thing we looked at, the other big thing, was competition. So what are the different forms of competition? Is competition good for learning? And so if you look at the current system, the biggest example of competition maybe is grades. And we looked at how grades impact students' behavior. And for the most part, it seems that grades reduce interest in the subject matter, like reduce how much people actually think through things. And like, I don't know about you guys, but in my university there's a lot of talk about like, why are you taking this course? Oh, I'm taking this course because it's a grade booster. Or it's like the person's not really interested in the subject matter per se, but just because you can get a good grade in this course, and grades are the thing that matters, that's why they go and take that course. So it's probably one of the most obvious examples of Goodhart's law in action, where grades are kind of the metric for how well you're doing, but everybody just ends up focusing on the grades, and then the knowledge part of education gets sidelined. They're pretty easy to implement, but they have pretty negative effects on students. And based on what we've read, I'd say that they make learning more difficult instead of easier. But we can also talk about competition in general in the system. So if you have a super competitive environment, then like a zero-sum environment where, for example, if one student does well, that means another student does worse. So, for example, there are limited spots in a program, and so everybody's competing to get into the program. Or everybody's graded on a curve, so how well the top student does actually impacts everybody else's grades. These kinds of things, I mean, they encourage people to, in the extreme case, like to, self-sabotage or like sabotage each other. So they're not very good for cooperation. And they're also not very good for risk-taking. Like, if you're in a competitive environment and you want to do well, then maybe you don't want to take the challenging math course that's gonna drag your average down, even though it's interesting, because at the end of the day, your average is what matters. So there's different types of competition. There can certainly be some kind of healthy competition. Like if you look at this hackathon, right? That this hackathon is basically a competition. There are prizes and stuff, but it's a pretty healthy environment. Everybody's eager to help each other out. And in high school, I was part of this competitive robotics program where it was, I'll talk about it more later, but it was a similar thing where yes, there was competition. Everybody were building their own robots, but every team wanted to help every other team because at the end of the day, it was about learning. Learning was the priority. We also talked about this thing that we're calling artifacting. So an artifact is anything that's a collaborative output from a discussion or from a learning session. So for example, an artifact can be a drawing or a piece of code, a video. It can be some kind of explanation of a concept that the group came up with. So I think this idea has a lot of promise. What we found in our learning groups, however, was that it's trickier to create artifacts than it might first seem, because like everybody's going into it with different goals in mind, and everybody has their own little thing to contribute to the conversation, but it's harder to get like one cohesive output from a group of people, especially if the group is relatively large. Just because it can be hard to get people on the same page. They have different motivations, different goals. So yeah, maybe a bit later on, Azlen can talk more about artifacting. But yeah, that's like one of the things that we played around with. Another thing that came up a lot was this idea of top-down learning. So if you think about a university course or a university program, the way that learning happens is bottom-up. So you have courses in specific things. It's like maybe you have like an algorithms course, or you have a web development course, or you have like a calculus course. And then later on, you may or may not find that knowledge that you learned useful. You apply it to some project. So it's this notion of like you learn the specifics first, and then you find a goal to which you apply the specifics. What we talked about is, well, what if you flip that on its head? What if you do the complete opposite? So you start with some high-level goal that you're completely unqualified for, and then you figure out, okay, like what are the things that I need to learn to get me to that goal? So let's say this is actually like a true story of like how I thought through these things. So I wanted to create some kind of platform that would improve our sense making. Because I felt that like we as a society are at the moment doing a pretty poor job at making sense of the world. And so I was like, okay, well, what might solve that problem? Well, it might be a web platform. And then the question is, how do you do web development? I know nothing about web development. And so I started doing research about like, okay, well, how do people do web development? What are the tools people use? What are the best practices? And so you're kind of starting with this high level goal, and you're getting more and more and more specific, more and more technical too. And eventually you might settle on something like, I don't know, I want to use React.js for my front end framework, and then I want to use a MySQL database, and maybe like Django for the backend or something like that. And this approach to learning seems better because you can always tie whatever you're learning back to the high level goal. It's like, okay, well, I need to learn this specific thing so that I can progress on my project. It's not some kind of abstract, oh, I'm learning calculus because calculus is useful, or I'm learning web development because web development is useful. It's hard to motivate people that way when they can't see a direct application for their project. And just very quickly, I also wanted to talk about my time in FIRST Robotics. So in high school, I founded and ran a FIRST Robotics team. It's like a competitive robotics team. And the goal is every year, at the start of the year, a new game gets announced with completely new game rules. And you're given 6 weeks to build a robot from the ground up. And so it's like, you're not given any time at all. It's this very intense period where everybody like sacrifices all their leisure time, all their friends, just to like go there and build this robot. But it's super rewarding because you end up learning a bunch throughout that process, and then you go on to like compete with other teams in the States or other teams in Canada, or like you'd have teams from all over the world come. And it was this like incredible life-changing experience. Like if any of you guys know anyone in high school, I would highly recommend that you tell them about FIRST Robotics. But the thing that I loved most about it was just this, was the fact that it was completely project based. Like, okay, we have to build the best robot possible because we want to win the competition, or we want to get some kind of award. Okay, well, how do you do that? Like, you have to think about strategy, you have to think about design, you have to think about the actual engineering process. And because you're given 6 weeks, it's like, you have to do that all very, very quickly. And that encourages people to learn a lot. There are also mentors. So the mentors were either parents or they were industry experts or something. And whenever we were stuck, whenever we had a question, like we come to the mentor would explain, okay, well, this is how this works, or maybe try, some other technique from what you were using. So that was pretty good. There was like a strong sense of community and like friendly competition, as I mentioned before. So FIRST uses this word called cooperation, and I pulled this quote from the FIRST website that describes it. So cooperation involves learning from teammates. It is teaching teammates. It is learning from mentors. It is managing and being managed. Cooperation means competing always, but assisting and enabling others when you can. And you really saw this in the events that people would go to, like the regional events and then the World Championship, where yes, there were matches, people would compete in the matches, but then everybody was like running around trying to help each other build their robots or fix up their robots. You usually had a lot more people show up to the events than you needed. So let's say you have a 30-person team, you really just need 6 people in the pit to fix up your robot. And so you had a lot of like high school kids with nothing to do, and so a lot of them would just go and like help other teams and socialize with other teams. And it was pretty magical. The two things that didn't work as well was knowledge transfer. So because it's only restricted to high school kids, like when the one wave graduates, then all of that knowledge gets lost unless you have some kind of mentor who acts as the knowledge keeper and then teaches the younger students how everything's done on the team. The other problem was that it was pretty resource intensive. So to sign up for one event, you needed something like $5,000 or $6,000. And most teams signed up for more than one event because that gave you more chances to improve your robot and, like compete and like get to the championship, etc. So that's pretty expensive. And then that's not even taking into account the costs of travel for all of your teammates, and food, and like resources that you need to buy in order to build. You need a space to build. So all of these things, like we had budgets in the tens of thousands, and then it's not uncommon for teams to have budgets in the hundreds of thousands. So if you want to make this type of project-based learning more accessible, then like the cost of some of these things needs to be brought down. Yeah, and so this is just like a short list of some of the papers that we read. So like you guys can look these up later if you're curious. Also, if I miss some important paper, then Azlen or Matt or whoever should maybe like chime in and let people know. But I felt that like these were the main ones that we talked about. So yeah, that's kind of it. Special thanks to Azlen for organizing this group. There might be more learning groups in the future, so definitely give them a follow. And yeah, let's. That's basically all I had. So maybe let's open this up to questions or discussion. Like, what were your guys' impressions of this, or did you have any thoughts about stuff that I didn't mention?
Yeah, thanks, Sav. I wanted to ask, what's your take on non-physical project-based learning? Because your example on robotics is really interesting. But of course, you brought up all those limitations of like the cost and everything. Most of the projects that I want to learn, though, are not subject to these limitations, of course. Like software, pretty cheap now. So what's the balance between
Can somebody
a
please mute
project?
themselves?
Yeah, well,
Somebody has a crying baby.
did it work for everyone?
Then I like some monkey and then I
Okay, good. Or maybe
So
each
Lesro
one.
or Juan or something. Please mute yourselves when you're not talking.
I did message him for muting.
Okay, I think we're good now. Cool, thank you. So you're talking about non-physical project-based learning.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of.
Be easier,
it should
right?
be easier. I think there's a lot of promise in it. Like if you mean like I don't know, learning to code, for example, that's something that you just need a laptop for that, right? So the cost for that is pretty low. But I was also thinking about, well, you might be able to use non-physical projects to learn something physical. So like one of the things that came up was like Kerbal Space Program, like learning about orbital mechanics through Kerbal Space Program. Or another thing that I think Azlen mentioned in one of the sessions was like, what if you did the same for like for surgery, for example, have some kind of like simulator for surgery that was realistic. I think you could certainly do these things, but then you need some kind of game development team to be able to put these things together, right? Like, how long did it take to make Kerbal Space Program? A few years. But yeah, no, like I think that's a really good idea.
And even if you have this good enough simulators, you could even do the robotics part in there. Not as fun, but at least to learn the basics.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like the one that I was thinking about a few days ago was like at universities you have all these car design teams, so like Formula SAE or Formula Electric, or you have the solar car team. What if you made something similar to Kerbal Space Program but for cars? So you just have like, super realistic physics and then a bunch of parts, and then you just have people design their own cars to compete in some competition or something. That could be fun. But of course the other problem with that, and this is I forgot to mention this when I was talking about robotics. The reason that you get a new game announcement every year was because once you figure out the the most optimal design for a particular game, everybody just goes with that design. So by the time you got to the last match of the championship for robotics, all the robots look the same, because it's this filtering process where you have the most optimal design that's able to score the most points get up to the championship, and all the creative designs, got outcompeted somewhere along the way. And so if you ran the same game twice, then everybody would just build the same robots. It's similar to this problem we were talking about where, if you can just Google something, then it takes the fun out of it, because you're not really learning, you're just asking a question and getting an answer. So whatever kind of system you come up with there has to take that into account. Like in Kerbal Space Program, there's probably like a list of top rocket designs. If you try to build a rocket some other way, then it just will be objectively worse. So I don't know how to fully solve that, but that's certainly something to keep in mind.
And you also mentioned exploration. Do you see that in contrast to search, or can they go hand in hand?
Yeah, I don't see a reason why they couldn't go hand in hand. What I meant with exploration was like letting people pursue their own curiosity. The thing I've noticed in a lot of university programs is that, you take this set of courses, we want you to learn these set of things. Anything outside of that, don't even waste your time on it, because it doesn't contribute to your degree. That, I don't know, I find that to be extremely unhealthy. Whereas if you just let people pursue what they're interested in, just take, here's an easy fix to the current university system. It's never going to happen. You get rid of degrees entirely. You let people just take a bunch of courses, and let's say I don't know, you need to get 50 credits for a degree, or however many, 100 credits or something. And then you would look at the courses that somebody takes, and it's okay, well, if the majority of the courses that person took were math courses, then you get a math degree. Or if it was some combination of math and history, then maybe you get a hybrid degree between math and history. So you just allow people to explore their interests, and then the degree is whatever the sum of their interests are. But that's very different from the system we have now.
Hey, you talked about competition and how it can be both healthy or unhealthy depending on how people treat it. So obviously when the stakes get higher and there's more on the line, the level of competition and the unhealthiness of the competition goes up. Do you have any thoughts or learnings on those lines?
So say, just so I understand you correctly, as the number of people goes up, the unhealthiness of the competition goes up.
Not the number of people as much as the stakes involved in successfully getting the higher grade. It's not I mean, obviously that does increase when there are more people competing for fewer spots, but that's not the only circumstance, right?
Yeah. I mean, it I think that's true. Like
Okay,
if you
like
yeah.
to rephrase my question, like do you have learnings or thoughts on how you can promote like a healthy attitude of competition, even in circumstances where right now like that doesn't really tend to happen?
Well, one thing you could do is, if you let people pursue their own interests, if you let people find their own niche and diversify, then you're going to see fewer people compete for the same real estate. Like, one of the ways in which you get unhealthy competition is when you have like several people competing for the same thing. It's like the same position, the same, like acceptance into some program. So I think if you let people diversify, that would make it healthier. And some of these programs, there's just so much placed on doing well and succeeding just so that you can get into the industry. So like in med school and law school, for example, I'm not sure how you can I came across this quote that went something like, well, like the competition in these places was hard because they were competing for more and more inconsequential things. So it's like if you're more and more similar to somebody, then you, to differentiate yourself, you end up competing for less and less consequential things. So I think I mean, it'd be interesting to see, but I think you can do a lot by just letting people diversify, find their own niches, instead of getting everybody to chase the same things.
Fair enough. Thanks. That makes sense.
Hello. Do you mind if I start a bit of a conversation?
Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to ask, are most of the attendees here from UBC and in engineering? I assume you know Sav personally.
Actually, I do not belong to any of those fields, nor do I know anyone personally. I just stumbled upon this in my timeline. Yes.
Okay. What university are you at?
Actually, I'm studying in the Philippines right now. I'm all the way on the other side of the world.
Wow.
And I'm
That's quite-
studying design and computer science currently.
That was directed to everybody.
Oh, wow, that's very interesting. So far away. And what about the rest of you? Are you is the majority of attendees from UBC here?
Sweden.
Sweden? Oh, wow.
I
Very
don't really
international
know.
group.
Colombia.
Oh, this is so much more international than I thought it would be. All right. That's okay.
Austin, Texas.
By any chance, Austin, Texas, what's your name and are you studying engineering?
No, I've switched careers from finance over to data science, and so I'm just like the previous speaker. I didn't stumble upon it. My friend stumbled upon it. He follows, I think it's Azlen on Twitter. He sent it to me, and I was like, sounds interesting. We'll see what it is. So we're working on something like with NLP, kind of on a personal project that maps to things that can be educational. So that's why we found it interesting to join.
All right. Thank you for sharing. I know Seth personally. We met a while ago, and so I guess I had a bit of an emotional breakdown, but I mean, who hasn't recently? And I was just like, I'm done with engineering. The way it works in Canada, and I assume it's similar in America and throughout most of the world, because there is an international body that dictates what is and what is not engineering education. Anyway, so in Canada, we have very rigid standards that define this is engineering education, this is how it must be, this is the status quo. My problem is that, at least at our university and many other universities, insofar as I know, is that the focus is not on education, but on merely passing through each academic hurdle, grades, assignments, and so forth. And oftentimes this resorts to cheating. And it's gotten to the point, and I don't know when it started, but it's gotten to the point that our professors know about this and they really just turn blind eyes to it. And so the problem is that now we're stuck with a system that everybody, including the professors, hate. And whenever someone tries to do something, nothing really is accomplished. So I posted on LinkedIn that I'm leaving engineering, I'm transferring out, and I said exactly why, because the goal of this education is not to be educated, it's to pass each hurdle, it's to get a good grade, to finish, not to think. Because so many times in my degree I've been questioning. I'm like, why are we doing this way? Why are we solving it using this formula? Why not this? And the most common answer to my very interesting questions are, Daniel, don't think about it. Obviously, every time I hear this, I'm a little bit discouraged because I like thinking. I spend most of my time in this organ right here. So obviously that makes me very unhappy, and I've just been trying to do something about it. And why I'd like to begin this conversation is that I was thinking, if I could perhaps gather enough people, we could start an online movement. Many revolutions throughout history were started by students for students. So why not having a revolution online, a COVID revolution, in which we discuss the problems we find with modern education and find creative solutions? I don't know what the rest of you think.
Sounds great. Let's do this.
Perfect. How do I change the camera or turn it around?
Yeah, I get your
Here we go.
feeling, but I would just say that it's not just about engineering. I'm sure it's in all disciplines.
I can imagine that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like there's the pressure, like, oh, we have to get a skill just to get like a good job, like succumb to the wills of society. Like thinking, like a lot of like thinking, like philosophy majors, like in my country, like, it's looked down upon because of how impractical it seems. They can't like see the long-term value of learning how to think well, and kind of it's really sad for me to see.
I agree entirely. In our country too, at least, and especially in the engineering groups, the arts are very much looked down upon. But that's obviously a bad thing, because the arts teach us how to live our lives. Literature teaches us examples from the past, and so does history. What's that quote? People who don't know history are doomed to repeat history's mistakes. What do you guys think?
That's a close variation.
Do add me here and spread my message of how cheating is normal. Because funny story, a few days ago I received an email from Student Wellness Mental Health Supports, and they want to have a conversation with me, and I'm pretty sure this is the reason. And I was looking it up. I heard at MIT they've begun a system where they're moving away from grades. I don't know. Austin, Texas, maybe you know more about this?
I have a pretty, I guess, a different perspective on it. I do understand where you're coming from in terms of the education system, and from what you're telling me, it seems like obviously it's international, right? And that might be anecdotal, but I think it's safe to say that there's a general consensus that the education system is very poor. My take is that it's a compounding system. Bullpath and I talked about this a bit. There's a lot of layers that have to be unwrapped to be able to just change the system, because you're talking about a ton of different layers that are compounded on top of each other, and it's like you're not going to change the system if you try to attack it straight on, because of how embedded in society and the economy it is. So it's like, for me, you have to change the economic model. I said this yesterday, you have to change the economic model and start off kind of small, and then you got to siphon the resources that the education system has. And the way you do that is that you empower teachers to be able to privatize their own skill set. So because teachers don't have another means of being able to teach, it's the academic system, that, plain and simple. So they're obviously not going to go against their own wallet. And I don't think anyone here would. So if you say you would after you've worked for 10 to 20 years in your industry, I can assure you that you're probably mistaken. But there's like a human component and there's an economic component, and then there's a lot of different layers. But the general census that you're talking about, I do feel like I guess a revolution type of education, like revolutionizing the education system, is much needed.
It's just very much in my personality to be revolutionary. I have a very big personality. I mean, my face occupies a third of the screen. My personality occupies this part and this part. So I love to talk big. Just my thinking really is that I'm sure everyone has ideas, and people don't talk about them. So that's why in my post I said, let's start this conversation. And unfortunately, I think only one person commented. I received 9 likes, which is basically a record for me. But let's let's start this conversation. Let's spread the message. Let's get the word out there. You said yourself that our education system is entrenched in our society, so let's work on changing our society. Why not? It's happened before.
Here's the biggest hurdle you're gonna face. If like, a lot of people for a long time have been talking about all of the ways in which the education system is broken. It's not even a controversial opinion anymore. And yet you still have, thousands of people going into college, for example, every year. And you still have a lot of companies who value college degrees, right? And so it might be possible to like if you try to go any other route, then you're basically going to be facing some kind of uphill battle, because that's kind of the only infrastructure that, I mean, we can argue about how reliable it is, but at least like people have the impression that it more or less reliably gets you a job in X industry. A lot of people, like, the amount of people I met in my program, at least, that are genuinely curious about learning is pretty small. The number of people who are doing it cynically because they want to get the grades, they want to get the degree, they want to get the position, number of those people is quite large. And for those people, well, I don't know what you could do. Like it seems like you'd have to have some kind of pretty big change in the way that our society works to even begin to tackle that. And maybe it'll happen, with just everything changing right now. But I don't know. It just seems like it seems like there's the problem of how do you improve learning, and then there's the problem of how do you improve the education system. Number one seems a lot easier to do than number two.
No, I agree. It definitely is a very difficult issue to tackle. But my thinking is that we're right now in pandemic mode, and naturally the question that comes up most often is that why am I spending thousands on thousands of dollars to take Zoom lessons when all of this information is already free on the internet?
Why are you?
And because, well, first of all, I started spending this money before the pandemic began, and second of all, I'm still here just based on the principles of momentum. I'm here because where else would I be? I've been carried here. It's easier to keep going forward than to stop, but
what's the thing?
Stopping is what we need.
Say you drop out of university, okay, then what? And a lot of people don't have an answer to the then what. It's like, but part of it is it's like this procrastination institution for people that don't have ideas for what they want to do with their life. So at least they're given some kind of, it's like the same thing as like people going into the army, or then you graduate, you get a degree, you get thrown into the corporate system where you also get told what to do. And so it's like you can live your whole life not really thinking too hard about it, as long as you check all the right boxes. So I don't
you
know,
become mindless.
Maybe it's like maybe part of it is just like letting people know that there are other things you can do with your life. Like you should maybe think a little bit about what you want your life to actually be like, instead of having institutions substitute for your life
Can
plans.
you mind if I add something? I guess to that, because again, I see it I see it different. Again, this goes back to earlier conversation I had with Bopath. Is like, we can't judge the current system based off the knowledge we have right now, because the system was embedded at a certain time where this process was actually valuable, right? So, education happened in public at first, and then they said, you know what, this is very valuable. Let's take it into an institution. Now we're not out on the streets, guys, so let's bring it indoors. And then they started conglomerating, and oh wow, we had so much interest, and that growth continues to happen, right? And so, like, to me, it seems like we're kind of looking at the system very cynical, and kind of like saying, okay, it's a terrible, terrible place. And I think there's reasons for that. But at the same time, we also have to acknowledge the fact that the process of transition happens all the time through history. So the question, like to Daniel's case, is like, number one, you need people that have big voices, right? Or that want to have big voices and that want to go out. History has shown that it rewards people with monuments that have big thoughts, right? And then the peons, the ones that do the work, they're some of them are okay with that role as well. So like, and that's fine. That's what kind of society functions, right? But so, like, I feel like we're taking like a cynical approach to trying to resolve the issue, as opposed to saying, hey, you know what, we've gotten to this point. Education used to be a good idea, the way it used to be done. How can we now start transitioning it to the education of the future, kind of like what you guys are talking about, right? And instead of just taking the approach of like, it's bad, it's like, okay, it's time to just start the new process, right? And kind of like looking forward as opposed to kind of looking back, right? Because again, I don't think I also have a different view of what you're saying, Sav. Like, I think there's a very small group of people, at least from the schools that I've gone to, that are people that are doing it to like cynically, like to make sure that they get the highest level and all that. There's a lot of people that I witnessed, including myself, that went to school because that was just the next option. Like, that was like, what do you do? Like, I don't come from a wealthy family. Like, that's just, I go to college. Okay, that's just what I do. And I become educated, right? A lot of people aren't directly pursuing something because they don't know what to pursue.
Well, that's what
it goes back to.
Yeah, it's like a stand-in for having your life figured out.
Yeah. So there's like, I agree with it a lot, and there's zero question that the education system needs to be changed. I think the focus is more on like, okay, how do we start changing it in a way where it's like, okay, now we start pulling resources from one system into the other, because the reality is that no one in the current education system is going to be like, okay, guys, it's time to change. Let's all just start doing the future, So, and it's in line with what you guys are saying. I'm just adding kind of like my twist to it. Like, I don't see it so like it was like it was an intended system in which that was like just crap. Like, I think it developed into that because things changed.
Yeah. Yeah, like I agree, with that sentiment. Like, if something is happening, and you basically, I think we also discussed in the learning group, basically there are 5 components to it, right? Like, in the society, one is the public player, like the government, then it's the private player, like the job market, then the parents, the kids, the teachers. You have to, align the incentives for all of them, and like and uh, like, if it's happening, it doesn't mean it's right, but it's also happening for a reason. But one another thing would be, like, even right now, if we are talking about changes, then we also have to take into account the fact we are discussing it right now is because it's difficult to make changes. So what if you make changes right now and you want to make changes in the future again, 50, 100 years later? So for that, you also have to pay attention to the fact that right now, basically it's very centralized. Like it's like a train. If you want to move from one track to different track, you have to make track or something like that. It should not be a train with 10 bogies. It should be like, I don't know, 10 different cyber trucks, right? So they can zoom in their own different directions whenever there is need. Like if you want to change, the change can be quick and yeah, dynamic. Like it's not a slow moving, like yeah, that kind of thing. Like even so, basically, if you want to make changes, yeah, like the changing infrastructure should also be there, right? Should not be this big moving vehicle, which if you want to change, you have to have everyone on board with it. So decentralized kind of thing, and I think at least this year, due to COVID and etc., like yeah, like it's been positive in that direction too. A lot of uh, yeah, like courses, a lot of people, breaking it up in decentralized cohort based learning groups, etc. And yeah, like I've seen a lot of activity in that area, not just the popular ones like David Perez and on deck, etc., but even in other skill based like areas. Even like I was seeing some like just a few days ago too, like some I don't know, like edtech startups in India doing different for different like fields, not just STEM fields, but skilling people and not focusing on those certificates or degrees, but moving away from that and yeah, like that.
Can I make a recommendation to you, Daniel?
Sure.
Because I think, again, your idea is very big and it has many different components. And I think about it from an economic incentive standpoint. And there's like this whole, like what we're doing here is kind of siloed into education, right? And rightfully so. Maybe making like this, all the different silos that encompass the education system, and kind of going down that, and even starting an international kind of organization here, and kind of starting on that and tackling like each one of those things, and either assigning people that want to volunteer, things like that. I mean, I'd be more than happy to participate in something like that. But like something that I can't remember who it was. They mentioned it inside of the chats, but like putting everybody in groups that attacked each kind of section of the education system. It was a fantastic idea.
Guerrilla warfare. No, I heard a quote that someone said that as long as people die, there will always be change. A little bit grim, but I believe there is ways to change existing system. The only issue is that the current system, as someone was saying, it's only one track. It's only one track. It's quite hard to steer away from the one single track that exists. So when we're making a new system, we would like to move away from a single rail to a road where we can just drive almost however we want. But also, I believe that it's possible to change from inside the system. Also, as you said, there are many different silos that you can tackle individually. You could make many different applications or many different solutions for many different areas in the current system, and then slowly take over more and more and more of the total area. And then suddenly everything might be able to connect together, and there you go. And also, I believe a lot of people in the current education system would like it to change, but they don't know how, or they don't have the energy to go through the administrative hurdle to actually do anything about it. And they don't know that they don't, as the people that's going through the system, the teachers also don't know that there is options, that there are other ways to do it. So just giving them other options and showing it that it is possible, and also going to the first. The initial people that might be able to see, for instance, younger people, going to younger people that haven't been too shaped into this strict form might also be a good way to go about it. And also a lot of other people that starting to see now that there might be other ways.
You know, we actually we are seeing a bit of that at our university and at other Canadian universities, insofar as I know. For example, I'm in third year in electrical engineering, transferring out. But last year I partook in a program called ILS, the Integrated Learning Stream. So just quickly, and I'll attach some papers to the links chat. On it, The professors, we had 5 courses in one semester, all mandatory. The professors put us into one large group, and instead of sectioning off each class for a specific time, the topics were, or at least the professors tried more so to teach the topics among common theme, even if these common themes overlapped between 2 classes. So, for example, the ultimate goal of the semester was to build a speaker, or a project that contained the speaker. So we were discussing at one point how different, I guess, parts of the speaker go to different areas of electrical engineering. So last semester I was taking signal processing, computer hardware, what else? A little bit on semiconductor theory and the introductions of transistors. The professors tried, it didn't work out so well, blame the pandemic. I am just now sending a link of one of the TAs who is very much in charge of running it. She is just absolutely amazing. Her name is Robin, and she does so much work. She tries so hard to work on engineering education, but the ultimate roadblock is the international organization that dictates what is an engineering education. And this organization, I found out just today, it has offices in Canada, the United States, Japan, Russia, all over the world. So I can't remember who said this, but ultimately it's a societal change that we need to bring about. And I really think that the time to act is now because we're all sitting at home. I don't know. What do you guys think about it?
What would that mean? What would act mean in this sense?
Act as an act now?
Yeah. What happens when I press the button? Call to action button. What happens when I press it?
Okay, wait, which button? I don't understand. The link I sent or another button?
No, you created an act now button. I press it.
Oh yeah, metaphor.
Okay, well, the first thing I really want to do is to just create more dialogue, because I feel that people are afraid to speak their minds. So I go on LinkedIn, I type exactly what I think, and only one person engages in a conversation, even though I think 2,000 people looked at my post. So out of 2,000 people, one person gave an opinion. So what is that, 0.2% responding rate? That is the first thing I want to do. The second thing I want to do is tell this organization of engineering education, get the hell out of our program, because obviously you don't know what you're doing. If everyone, including the students and the professors, hate the standards you set.
Is that IEEE or which one?
It is called. Hold on, I will find it right now. The Canadian branch is called Engineers Canada. And I just had the link open, but I was dumb enough to close it. Oh, and I found today there's an act called here we go, the Washington Accord. So I'm on engineerscanada.com/accreditation/the Washington Accord. So Australia, Canada, China, Chinese Taipei, Hong Kong, India, Ireland, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, New Zealand, Pakistan, Peru, Russia, Singapore, South Africa, Sri Lanka, Turkey, UK, and the US are all signatories of the Washington Accord. So all of these countries have signed a deal that say our engineering educations are going to be the same as the rest of these countries. I can imagine that if we hate the system in Canada, then all these other countries hate the systems too. And just, why is this not on the news? Why is the mainstream media focusing on one set of issues? Why are these engineering issues not being brought forth? I'm sure the same issues are in many other branches, just I'm very biased to engineering because I've been in this, I guess, community for 2.5 years now.
Well, my question would be, okay, so we have a lot of criticism of the current education system. What's the alternative?
The alternative is that we have so many ideas and we have so many people trying to work on alternatives. For example,
so this is like this hackathon, right?
Yes, this hackathon.
We got a bunch of people together brainstorming a bunch of different things. Some of them will be related to learning. Some of them might take off. The learning groups that Azlen organized, this being one of them, there's also several other ones. There's one for learning Chinese. There's one for environmental psychology, and then there's also like a writing course that he wants to do. For the most part, I would say those learning groups were a successful experiment. So they are a way to learn about a specific subject to find like-minded people who also want to discuss the subject with you. So, like, to the question of what should we do about it, I'm really interested in just like running a bunch of experiments, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, keeping the things that work, and then just trying to build stuff like that and see if we can then scale it. That makes a lot of sense to me. Raising awareness for this stuff, I mean, that might also work. The worry I have with those kinds of things, it's like, well, you often end up with a lot of talk and no action. So I don't know. Like, I'm just more inclined to start with the action and then see go from there, see what happens.
I see where you're coming from, and I appreciate your idea of trying out these experiments. In a way, our ILS program was an experiment too, which happened to be successful. My just ordeal is that I did not want to take, and this is one of the bigger reasons why I'm transferring out of engineering, is that I did not want to take any courses that have to do with transistors. So I think I have to take 2 of them. I just absolutely hate them. And my question is, why do I have to take them? There's so many different areas in electrical engineering. Why is it that I have to study exactly transistors? Why can't I do more in signal processing? Why can't I learn more about computer vision and artificial intelligence? Why do I have to do this? Why can't I take these other courses in the same department? And always the answer is because the Canadian engineering...
Bundling is a problem, yeah.
Sorry?
Like, bundling of courses is a problem, and it's usually, well, like you said, it's not even the university's choice. It's like some organization, a bunch of people in suits get together and say, well, these things are the things that are important. So yeah, but like another thing that and I don't know, I don't know that much about it, and it's like we were saying before, the economy plays a big role in this whole thing, and it seems like, I mean, like we're still, I feel like, in the very early stages of whatever changes COVID brought about, but it seems like there was a fundamental shift that happened that is going to affect our economy and is affecting our economy in a big way. Like, you're, at least from where I'm sitting, I'm noticing stuff like, Substack become popular, OnlyFans become popular, and basically these are all services that exist outside of this sort of corporate economy. They're more like part of some kind of gig economy, where individuals can create their own brands, their own niches, their own monopolies, and somehow figure out how to earn a living that way. And it seems like that is becoming a bigger and bigger thing, especially with COVID and the rest of it. So I don't know how this is going to impact things, but I feel like that is like, if there's going to be any innovation that comes, it's going to come out of this, shaking up of the economic landscape, and I feel like there's a lot of opportunities that have been created as a result of COVID. I don't know how that's going to play out, but I think that's something that we should consider and talk about.
Sav,
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I personally think you just said the answer. The platforms that are becoming popular, just like you said, are the ones that are private individuals can monetize their time. The difference is that private individuals can go do a 9-to-5, come home, do whatever additional things that they want to do with their time, and spend their time as they want to, right? So if a platform exists for them to be able to do things that interest them, and they go out and share it with the world, they're going to do that. So it aligns their incentive with their time. Okay. A platform doesn't exist like that for a teacher. A teacher can go to the 9 to 5, but all they're doing is feeding the system that already exists, and then they're going outside and saying, "Oh, I can write some blogs and make some additional money." And then what happens? They leave the teaching world and they just write blogging, and that's it, right? But there's no monetization of the actual profession as a teacher except inside of the education system. And so what I'm trying to say is that if you can model an education platform, because in my view, all the education, all the boot camps, everything is being delivered under the same economic model that is, it's a different medium, it's online, it's structured a little bit different, it's linear, but it's the same thing. They're trying to get their certifications valued by the businesses, right? So it's always that. But in my mind, if you can get teachers to monetize their profession outside of the education system and start funneling students either from the current education system, shifting parents' views on the education system, and then you starting creating this pressure that Daniel's talking about that he wants to do on the education system from the outside. Like, for example, if you put an international organization out of this together and you get 10 students to go compete in an international robotics competition and none of them have degrees, guess what? You're going to start having questions like, hey, these guys don't 0 degrees. They don't even come from reputable college. Where do they come from? Oh, they don't have to go through the education system. So you have to build your credibility under the current system and then say, listen, you don't need the same things that you guys are promoting because it's outdated. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, right? So there's a couple different streams in this. There's the education, there's the education itself, the delivery of the education. There is the financial, economic part. And then there's that whole other system that already exists that you have to create this credibility before you can just say, hey, your system sucks. Because again, you're talking about the livelihoods of millions of people. You're not talking about just teachers. You're not talking about parents. You're also talking about students that create an identity based off these titles. So how do you shift that identity? By allowing them to be seen through other means of education. So if I can go out of the education system and people look at me like, oh, he's just as good as the other person that got their PhD, there you start adding value. So how do you create that? And it starts by creating credibility within the system from outside of the system, if that makes sense.
It does. Those are very good points. I was going to bring up that one actually about how you're talking about the idea of credibility. How is it that you prove to an employer that you've actually done something? If universities were to cease to exist tomorrow, how would I go about proving to someone that I actually do know what I know if I didn't have a piece of paper on it? So it raises some very interesting questions. I was thinking about it, and one way around it is when you show up to an employer. I don't know how many employers do this, but at an interview, how many interviewees are tested on their skills, given some sort of activity? Do this, do that. Maybe I've been working on an online portfolio. I'm trying to raise some money over the Christmas break through photography. So I have my own website of photography, a little bit of how I take pictures, show people that I am competent before they actually book me. Another thing I was thinking about is that to raise awareness. This goes again, I was talking about how people are afraid to talk about what they think. I've noticed, and Sav, we were talking a little bit about this yesterday, the Naked Emperor. Everyone sees these problems, but it's not talked about on the open. It's not talked about on social media. It's rarely talked about in the classroom. For these conversations, actually, I defer to Robin Paul, who's, I guess, a Google Scholar link I posted into the chat because she's pursuing a PhD in the current system. So she has quite a bit of credibility. And perhaps for people in the future to receive other kinds of credibilities, they would maybe refer to her. Just lots of ideas I'm brainstorming. What does everyone else here think?
Super agree. I remember seeing in my timeline that one like good interview question is asking if they have like any side projects, hobbies, because it shows that creativity that they're not just like following a path, but they've actually been doing something with their skills. I guess that's why because a lot of the popular tech companies like FAM, you always see they're not just like 100% like their company or their job. They're always doing other side things. Like I'm seeing portfolios of a Google interaction designer who's also a meditation teacher, someone who's also doing photography. I want to encourage that I guess not only that self-learning, but we can this it's possible to be a polymath, like because I believe the human mind, I guess it's sad if we just limit ourselves to just a single path. Like why can't we explore? I hope I'm making sense. Sorry, quite the ramble.
I think that makes sense.
I really like that.
What I've seen from my brief introduction to industry was like a larger reliance on like internships, especially when hiring people who haven't had the time to really build any sort of portfolio. And instead of interviewing them with like kind of like exams and like basic whiteboard questions, they usually just try and throw completely absurd problems at them, things that they would have never encountered in school, probably would have never encountered elsewhere, and problems that aren't really actually being pursued like by the company, because like the interview process itself is like such a short window of time to really get to know someone and get to know how they approach problems, and that's really what you're after. So I feel like that's just kind of like the brief window to see if the person is just going to shut down if they get like overwhelmed by not knowing anything, or if they're going to be open to asking questions. I found that when I receive feedback from like those types of processes, usually it's because I kept asking questions, and throughout the whole thing, feeling like, oh God, I'm such an idiot because I have no idea what's going on. Usually, like that kind of humility is really what people are after, because as long as you have the humility and a drive to to learn more, I feel like that's way more important than like exams and stuff like that.
No, I agree that humility is very important. You just talked about how you feel like an idiot. I too feel like an idiot so often. And Sav and I were discussing yesterday the extent to which we both are crazy. Oftentimes, I've come to the conclusion that the only people in this world who are normal are the ones who think they are crazy, because this world is so crazy. Anyone who dares to think they are normal in this crazy world is crazy by definition. If craziness is the standard out there and you align with that standard, well, you must be crazy.
I know there's a beautiful quote that says something like that, that you need to be crazy enough to see the world, or the world will swallow you. I don't remember. But yeah.
No, I agree.
Maybe to go back to the original distinction that I think Sav was trying to portray in the presentation, I think I would draw a line between future of learning and future of education. And in my case, because I have some previous experience similar to Daniel's, one like 9 years ago that I graduated from electronics as well, and one 1 year ago when I dropped out sort of from economics. So that's pretty fresh. And I have no hope whatsoever for that part of the future of education system as something that we would change ourselves. But on the other side, the future of learning and future of learning systems, totally on it. because the big difference, I think it's in two aspects. One, it's about tools, and we can build tools ourselves. We don't have to wait for a system to produce those tools. And secondly, but more important, it's about the individual. So the education system is always about masses, and learning systems is always about yourself. So Sav, you mentioned about personalization, but we didn't dive into it. I don't know if you have any more comments, but for me, future of learning definitely involves building tools so that every individual can learn on its own way, their own way.
Yeah, I kind of look at learning and just picking up knowledge about the world kind of like a physical exploration of a space. And so if you find yourself in some kind of interesting forest or something, then like you're, if you just let 100 people loose and just say like, go, explore, different people are going to go in different directions. They're going to find different things interesting, right? And that path that you go carve through the forest is like, it can be goal driven, like I talked about before, but for some things I'm just interested in trying to learn more about it, and I don't, to me it's not immediately clear why I'm doing this, why I find some certain subject appealing. I just do, and then I just chase it. Like I just pull on that like thread of interest and wonder and curiosity, and then I find more things that are interesting to me, and it's just kind of this explorative process. But that thing is personal to each individual. Like my bookshelf looks very different from your bookshelf, looks very different from Daniel's bookshelf, right? So if we don't want to snuff out creativity, if we want to encourage creativity, then we have to encourage some kind of personalized learning journey.
We were talking a bit about that yesterday, if I remember correctly. I think we came up with something. I don't know if you can see this. This is terrible.
A little bit.
Similar to this. So you have some sort of graph which starts in the bottom, where in the bottom you can see these are like the entry points to different areas of knowledge or skills or subject matters. And then you can see how all of these different knowledge matters lead up to other more complex, more advanced topics that later can lead up to which one of you described as here, this field of mystery. So you could either start by selecting one of the nodes in the top, one of the mysteries, that one of the holes in our collective knowledge, and try to see what do I need to learn to be able to even get a grasp of how we're able to solve this. But then you could also just start in the bottom and just start with anything and become curious and see, oh, I can take any kind of path in this kind of graph. And a great education system, I think, would be formulated in such a way that it would state instead of saying you need to take exactly these nodes to be able to pass the system, it would instead say you need to take at least this amount of foundational node to get some sort of general knowledge. And then you need to have at least some sort of depth to be able to at least get a feel of specialization in some way. And then you have at least a bit of points over to spend however you want, either to specialize on something totally different, to specialize even further in the point that you wanted, or go some other direction totally. I think that could be quite nice. And also to see in the education system that there are multiple different area points. I don't know if my handwriting is able to read at all, but that you have the curiosity that can drive together with some sort of inspiration, some sort of motivation that can lead you to explore the knowledge. But to do that, you also need some sort of overview to see what kind of knowledge exists there out there to look through. And the knowledge can give you the right material to start honing your skills, which you can use together with tools to be able to actually do some stuff in the real world. And then for the part about credibility, because that is, for some people at least, some sort of end goal, you have three different ways, partly trust, proof of work, or tests, where trust could be certifications from the current university or some other kind of certification authority, or trusting some other company that you worked with previously. Proof of work could be a portfolio that some of you have been talking about, or you have the interview process, the test that they provide manually. But the trust and proof of work are derivatives for this test store in other ways. So I feel like some sort of system which can provide all of this in a good way, which is much more flexible in its foundation, that could take many different forms, could be quite interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm completely on board with this. Like, one of I mean, this closely relates to one of my ideas for the hackathon. So hopefully in the coming days I'll get around to like writing up more of what I think of that. But yeah, no, I think that's great.
About your analogy on exploration, Sav. So you think about this process as like having a map or a territory that you can walk around and learning as visiting different locations, right? So maybe to complement your analogy, one of the questions would be, what's the GPS system? What's the equivalent of a map, right? What do you do if you get lost? How do you know where you've been before? Like, do you leave stuff in the ground so that you remember the places you visited? How do you keep track of trails, right? And if you ultimately have a set of tools that give you the confidence to go and explore a territory, even if you don't know anything about it, maybe you would even end up in a state, as Bianca mentioned, like naturally becoming a polymath because you visited so many territories that maybe if you try to plan ahead, like I'm going to visit whatever many countries in this territory of knowledge, you wouldn't be able to, but freely moving around, you would. I just would like to see if you have any ideas for the equivalent of a GPS and maps and all those navigation tools.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think polymathy and trying to encourage polymathy is an important component to this. I can't quite fully see how it relates to this whole thing, but I feel like it's really important. Like even in the sense that it's kind of like the opposite of specialization, and we have a world where like the dogma is go and get a specialization, and then if you like have any other interests, like you probably shouldn't pursue them because your career is what matters or something. Like in just reading history, it seems like before there were a lot more polymaths than we have today. So we should encourage that. And if we build a good learning system, then maybe that will encourage polymathy. In terms of some kind of GPS system, I think I think what Leonard outlined is a good start to something like that. And the other thing that I keep mentioning to people is this website called metacademy.org, where you can see these relation graphs of or like dependency graphs for a particular topic. So if you're trying to learn about, I don't know, something in math, like for example, the one we were looking at before is like cotangent bundles. Then like you can see all of the prerequisites to that idea, and then maybe you know some of these things, and so you can tick those things off on your map, and so you know there's like a few concepts that you still need to learn before you can get to cotangent bundles. I think that's one way that a map could work. And then if you let people take different paths through the map. So say, for example, that maybe there's more than one way to get to a particular node, to get to a particular math concept. Then as you have more people using this map, all of these ways will show, and maybe you'll have like some kind of convergence on the best way to get from point A to point B. And this is, I believe, like a big part of what you're working on right now.
Yeah, and I don't know if you were in a call in which I recommended this book by Robert Moore called On Trails and Exploration, and he mentions exactly what you just said. Like trails are designed by people, but they're never used in the same way that they were designed, so they're continuously evolved and adapt depending on the shortcuts that people take. And even if they had like this insight of what could be the best route to the top of the mountain, for example, if people find a better path to get there, then it will eventually converge to that other one. And it's not difficult to simulate this in software because you just keep track of dots, like locations. The difficult part, maybe if Edward is on the call, before you can do this knowledge tracking way of things, you have to do some knowledge representation, which is his topic, right? And once you represent knowledge as things that are connected to each other, then you can go on and like walk on that representation. But then, like, I don't know, timestamps and like tags, this user was here at that time, whatever. And then, of course, showing alternatives on each step. Maybe this is the traditional trail or path, but other people step this other way. And if you're interested, then you could go on a side trail as well. I'll post a link to the book. It's my favorite book of the year so far. So a few weeks to read it, but yeah, really good.
I was curious if anybody else had any other thoughts about well, like that story I brought up is like, for example, what does learning look like 10 years in the future? And you know, like, so we mentioned some things here about having like a learning environment and then having a GPS for it. We talked about like enabling teachers to sort of go solo and or you know, like earn their own income, be independent. What other things do you guys think we'll see in the future? Like if we have some kind of like future education utopia, what is what is that to everybody?
I think learning in the future will be a lot more self-directed and a lot more based on curiosity, more like children learn. Actually, I expect you said within the next 10 years, right? I expect several huge countries to have transitioned to something like a universal basic income during the next 10 years. And that changes everything because you don't need anymore to be like, oh, I need a certification because I need to get a job and all that shit.
Lurking
right?
and really enjoying the conversation so far. And I have been out of school for almost as long as I was in school. And it sounds like most of the group in this room is either in school right now or not too far after it. So it's interesting to hear your take compared to 14 years ago and what people were thinking then before like online learning was even a thing. But I've worked in online education for the past 10 years, creating software and tools for it. And I think one thing that would be really cool, and what I like about your vision, is it's very self-directed, not compelled. I think a lot of the stress tension and anxiety we have about learning right now is that so much of it is compelled. It's not really what we want to do or what we had hoped for. And there's lots of reasons why that's the case, which you've all been highlighting quite a few of them. But if we were able to get to this place where we could explore learning based on what kind of, I really like the idea of like mystery as a motivator and the learning gap or the knowledge gaps that we would want to explore, things that are not done nor known yet. I think that would be really cool. But I think the other aspect of that is that doesn't have to be a time and place type of thing like it is now. That could just be something that's always happening. Like that doesn't have to be like something that happens in a campus for 4 years or 8 years or however long at a certain phase of our life. Like that's just something that should exist. So my utopian vision for learning and teaching in the future is more something just like it blends into living. Like it's just something that you have with you, like your iPhone. You do like you do social media or whatever it is that you do, but you're always taking some step forward. You're always helping someone else
is
take a
not
step
some
forward.
kind of compartmentalized thing that you do. It's just
Yeah, it's like there's certain parts of our tools that we use now that we didn't have 10 years ago, some even a few years ago, that we never do it. Now we do it all the time, every day. We don't think twice about it. We don't even think about it as a thing. It's just the water we're swimming in. And that's my utopian vision for like learning and teaching in the future, is one of those things. And I think for that to happen, there has to be tools that make it happen.
Is this maybe a general statement you could make about modernity? Is that everything just became a lot more compartmentalized? Like, you go to a school specifically to learn. You go to a gym to exercise. Probably some other examples of this, there are places of entertainment that we go to specifically have entertainment. Whereas before, all of that was just part of life. I don't know if that.
I think that's true about learning for sure. I'm not sure if that's true about other things though, because I think part of the issue is, like, it used to be that we would do certain things in actual physical places all the time.
Day, then you don't need to go to a gym anymore, right? But
right.
Yeah.
But like we used to have actually though this is another kind of side tangent, but we used to have clear places for when we were working in the shop, another place that we were at home, or another place that we were in the guild, and we would know how to show up at those places and think different ways about them. We'd have a persona that we bring into them based on a physical location. And so learning, once it became institutionalized, it became a place you could go, became one of those things naturally. But the cool thing about the digital environment is that it isn't place bound, it's not location bound. And that's a cool thing, but it's also a very confusing thing, because I think deep in our psychology, we are tied to thinking about doing things in places, actual places. And we have this kind of expectation of ourselves. This is why if you walk into a beautiful campus like Oxford or a library, where you fictionally enter the world of Harry Potter or something, there's something about a place designed like that inspires some ambition to learn, to be better, and it's very place based. However, now we can just pop on Discord or Zoom or whatever, and we may not even be wearing pants. It doesn't matter, but we're not showing up in a place, and it's very confusing. It's really cool, but it's very confusing. So one of the things again, this is a side tangent, but one of the ideas I like about what you're talking about with a map is if you could map kind of the places that you might go, and you could have some sense of presence that I'm here, these people are here in this place with me, these people have already been there. That would be, I think, pretty useful, because it would kind of get back to the sense of context that we have lost when we gained a lot of other cool things. But
as you're talking about that, made me think of is what if you model all of the internet as some kind of SimCity thing, or it's you just have the internet is a city, and then you have different buildings for different websites. So it's you go into the Facebook building, or you go into the Twitter building.
Yeah.
And then you can see, for example, you can have a friends list and you can see where all your friends are. It's okay, well, these friends are currently hanging out on Twitter, and then this person is on Khan Academy, for example. That could be pretty funny.
Yeah, I think that would actually be, I would guess that would be a net positive for the world, because I think part of what the internet and software has done is just fragmented our places, which has then fragmented our personas. Because I just think this is a weird idea, but I think the way that we think about how we're showing up is extremely based on places and what we want and what our ambitions are. And when the internet breaks those and they're all blended together, it's just very confusing and not necessarily good.
Yeah, I agree with this. When I was doing research for my Interhacked project, apparently learning isn't so intuitive to do online due to how removed it is from context. For instance, when you're learning a hands-on skill like sculpture or pottery, if you're doing it in a class, you have the context of being in the class and the teacher being there. Meanwhile, if you just follow it online, you are essentially like 2 steps removed from that learning context. So I'm really bullish on having like these visual metaphors like places. It's like how similar for computers, we're using like folders to visualize the something storage, and the old Apple skeuomorphism style where they would like use real life objects to represent their apps. It definitely helped our minds adapt to the digital sphere. Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like we got very skeuomorphic with the details, like to help us relate to like a button is something you can actually push, but we have zero idea of that at any kind of macro scale. Like, where are we now when we're doing this? Because like I think what you said reminds me of another thing about like unlearned learning is so difficult, is that you move between places like so quickly. Like you get an email that you're going to, a reminder for the session, and then you move from this email place to like a Discord call or a Zoom call, and then whatever is in follow-up is somewhere else, and it just feels very disjointed. And that's not how our brains have evolved to understand like sequences. It's not how we've evolved to learn things. So it's kind of schizophrenic. I think places are also tied to memory. There's a really good book called Moonwalking with Einstein that goes into that kind of historical discussion and context for memory. And so much of it is, I'm sure we've all heard of the mind palace, but so many of our associations and contexts and feelings are tied to these spaces that when you kind of obliterate all that online, I wonder it's harder to remember stuff. In some ways, you get that kind of ADD brain.
Yeah, actually adding to this, I was wondering if any of you had any thoughts on how our cognition or our mind has changed based on on these digital environments that we've grown up in.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if there's any research done on that. I personally haven't looked at anything like that. But, well, one of the cool things that I've noticed is that, people of different ages are now, how best to say this? It's like the generation is shrinking. So the people that because usually it was like the people who you can relate to, usually, in the same like 25-year cohort, right? But what I'm noticing now is that, well, for example, like I have a half brother who is in high school right now, and what they're doing is in a lot of ways like the mindset and the worldview is completely different from like my age group, and we're only separated by like 5 years. So I think part of what online culture does is it just lets, like, whatever societal change happened before, now it's drastically accelerated. Where like for example, like the 18-year-olds are different from the 20-year-olds. They're different from the 16-year-olds, different from the 14-year-olds, etc. It's the gap of people who you can actually relate to is shrinking in a sense. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know if anyone else noticed that.
No, I think that happens when you're at that age, because you're learning new things that, like, every year you are totally different, right? But once you reach, like, I don't know, the 20, half of the 20s, actually changes happen a lot slower. So you will find out that, I don't know, when you're 30, you might have a lot in common with someone who's 50 or 60 because changes happen slower, you know?
No, but I mean, like, the culture is different. Like, they have different memes, they use different social media apps. Like, a lot of kids start using technology, like iPads, iPhones, etc., a lot earlier than I did, and I started using these things a lot earlier than, like, people who are 5 years ahead of me. So the culture, because the culture changes so fast, you get these pockets of people that grow up in a certain stream.
Yeah, I think like one reason for that could be, the friction to changes like quite less due to the internet. Like if you look 20, 25 years back, the main things like which I don't know, like cultural stuff would be, maybe kids would have, Walkman, iPod, or max to max your like exposure would be via a television or like yeah, stuff like that. But now the like it just takes a click to yeah, like the propagation is very fast compared to back then. Like the friction is eliminated, all the friction, like software eliminates in every area. So the same goes for pop culture too, like yeah.
I always find it very tricky trying to compare any certain group of history or any certain generation or any subgroup within a given generation to any other group in the past, because we're so heavily influenced by so many different things that it's you're not really comparing apples to apples. So it goes back to like my thoughts on it. It's like, okay, we know there's an issue. We know there needs to be a change. How do we go about that change? And like start from there without really looking back on what the system is. It's like, how do you start implementing the action, like from the get-go. And Paul, I was looking at your site there, like the Pathright, very interesting stuff. Like there's kind of, it's enabling teachers to create their own content and be content creators, kind of what I was trying to hint at.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think that we started that, like doing that in around 2009, which was fairly early. And now it's like there's like a whole lot of platforms that do that, and some of them are not even like strictly education. Like some of the most interesting education happening, I think, is happening in small groups like this that are not visible. They're not in any marketplace you can shop. But also in like even like mass market places like YouTube. Like some of the most creative teaching that happens is like if you get into the right YouTube channels, some of the people that are teaching there are just doing really creative, imaginative, like effective things. And I think the monetization angle on education it's a really tricky thing, but has a lot of promise. Like I think a lot of the marketplaces for education, like Udemy and things like that, it's cool that people can do that, but then they get gamified into kind of this content marketing creator ecosystem that's really more about like making the money. And even if it started as something that was genuinely curious and genuinely good-willed and actually educational. So the things it becomes less about education and more about kind of packaged, scalable kind of educational artifacts, which in my view is like more like a modern internet version of credentials themselves. Like credentials are just these signals that people pay a lot of money for that are pretty low fidelity signals for what they supposedly measure. They supposedly are reliable, trustworthy ways of knowing, can this person do the thing I would hope they could do for me? And I think online courses are, in a sense, like that whole ecosystem, the marketplace ecosystem side of it particularly. It's not all bad. In some ways it's better than the old way. but it's still kind of like a new version of the same kind of thing. Like it's a very fuzzy signal. It's not necessarily something you can trust. I don't know. Like I think a lot of you were talking around this idea, but my opinion is that until the underlying issue of credentialing kind of is solved, like accreditation, like basically answering the question reliably, should I pay this person and how much to do the thing that I hope they could do? Until we develop a better way to measure that and assess that, like I don't know if the other kind of problems are going to shift much. Like they'll probably shift in degrees, but not fundamentally. So I think like the interesting question to me is like, how do we make what people are trying to assess like more clear and more visual than like a degree or like a LinkedIn badge that I took this online course or whatnot.
Yeah, and in Sav's spatial metaphor, maybe at a large scale, it will be difficult to deal with all the privacy concerns. But if you're a teacher with 15 students, for example, then I wouldn't be against that, giving them a tool to get a sense of what parts of those territories each of their students are exploring. And maybe that would even be a way of identifying, okay, this seems to be very interested in math. And then like if that continues to happen, maybe put them on that track without that being something explicit, or just discovering as like this one's really interested in astronomy and it's not really in the curriculum, whatever, but like you would get that sense from being able to, on a bird's eye view, to take a look at what parts of the territory they're exploring. But of course, once you scale that, I don't know how much information you want to share. I don't know if that would be a way to accomplish what you just said, Paul, but yeah, made me think about that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of promise to thinking in that direction for sure.
And we've talked before about maybe judging people based on their portfolios, their list of projects that they've done over their degree. Of course, then the question comes up, well, how much work did the person actually put into the project? How much do they actually know? With code, it's easier because you have access to GitHub repositories. It might be a little harder with physical things where the person just has a couple of pictures of the project they did. Yeah, so but the other thing is like one of the major ways in which people figure out like, is this person trustworthy? Should I hire this person? A lot of it happens through personal connections. So it's like if I have a friend who I know is a competent programmer, then I will suggest that person to, you know, my company. And that, I mean, like we can talk about how good or bad that is, but that seems to be a much better way of like determining whether somebody is capable than like going through the university system, because in that case it's like as a company you're trying to solve the problem of how do you find reliable people. Finding them through your network of friends, colleagues, etc., that seems to be more reliable than finding them through this guy graduated from university. But that seems to be like that whole, you know, this guy graduated from university seems to be a more reliable way than looking at people's portfolios, at least at the time being. So the hierarchy, as I see it, is like personal connections, and then educational institutions, and then personal portfolios.
Yeah, I think that's what, like you said, personal connections. I think that's what OnDeck's cosine is trying to do, right? If I'm not wrong. Like they basically refer people and they get cosigned. Like, and yeah, people publicly tweet about it or something like that. So it's yeah, like, and you know, even like everything on OnDeck is basically network driven. Like, yeah.
Lambda School, I think, does some of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've hired a lot of people. Like my brother is Mark on the call. We have the same avatar. We're twins actually in real life. But we've hired a lot of people together, and that's the way we do it. We've never once looked at a resume, or we've looked at them, but we don't put any weight on them. It's completely based on kind of a personal alignment, which usually happens in some kind of relationship, paired with actual visible evidence that they can do good work. And like I've worked in other industries too, like, and so like what we right after school we worked in a illustration studio, and an interesting thing we saw there was like the best way of getting new commissions for books or animations or whatever was for the artist to do something that they really wanted to do and do it really well, like to essentially make their own personal book or game or whatever it was that they wanted to do. And inevitably, not right away, like, but inevitably that led to like getting the work that we wanted to do and that they wanted to do and that was best suited for them. And I think that's just like a general principle that anybody, no matter what situation they're in, like if you're super frustrated with school or whatnot, like you can do, like you can put good work out there and you can make it as visible as possible. And that eventually, it doesn't seem like it's as sure of a path as like a degree, but in a sense, I think it's more sure. It's just less kind of like predictably time-based. So I think like tools that could make, like I think what you're getting at, Sav, is tools that can make the invisible things that we value more visible, more shareable, like things that don't lend themselves to the artifacts that you're talking about. Kind of something that you could actually see or represent without having to use this like fuzzy, poor proxy, like a grade or a degree or whatever. I think those kind of tools are possible. They just don't exist yet.
For sure, yeah. I have to get going now, but I mean, you guys can like feel free to continue the discussion for as long as you want. But yeah, I just have to run. So
yeah,
I guess I
thanks
just
for
want to say, yeah, like thanks
thank
for
you.
everyone for showing up and like having such a great discussion on this. This is really productive, I felt.
Yeah, thank you for this initiative. Like, I don't think I've had a conversation like this in a while. I've been craving for such intellectual discussion.
Nice.
Well, I'm happy you all came.
Yeah,
And,
thanks a lot.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
talk to you sometime
Thanks, Zach.
sometime later. Yeah, see you
For
guys.
the time.